Evening garden, silent fountain, glimmering stars in its depths, a sudden leaf falling toward the water, ripples bring memories. Sunshine, laughter, young folk dreaming of a world they would mold. Each girl of her muse, each boy a hero. Ripples bring memories. Friend, all our lives we spent seeking the stars, thinking them almost at hand. How far must we roam ere our minds turn within, ere we at last understand? Twilight mist falls, old folk linger, dream what they might have done. Youth's shining star has become an ember, ripples bring memories.
Very nice. I was crossing Geary Avenue in San Francisco on my way home from the post office, and suddenly that song came to me. They sent very unusual chords, very modern. And I don't know how you like it here in India. Do you like it?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So, do you have any questions to ask me today?
Say more about controlling destinies, Swami, and about how do you still be in service of God and yet do your duty as a householder?
Well, can you translate a little bit? I didn't hear completely well.
How can you do your duty to God
I heard
and
that.
yet be a householder, and in terms of controlling your own destiny?
But your duty is to God as a householder. In fact, you know, one thing very interesting that Master wrote in Autobiography of a Yogi, they changed it in later editions, and I put out the original edition. But he said the householder path is higher than the renunciate path, if you can keep completely the attitude of renunciate in the household. But if you do your duties in the world and still keep the thought of God, that is the highest path. So whatever you do, do it for God, and then you do your duty. And sometimes God has His ways of correcting you. If you're off course, or if you need to go a new way, I had this experience because I was completely dedicated to serving my Guru within SRF. And I defined my service to him as service to SRF. And he arranged that I be thrown out of my ear. I had absolutely no choice in the matter. And I thought, what is happening? I said to my Guru, even if you abandon me, I will never abandon you. but I didn't know what to do to serve him. But really I can say that everything I have done in my life has come since I was thrown out. Everything of value, including this song. So, God, if you give your life to God, He may sometimes give you some pretty healthy tests, because Master used to say, living for God is martyrdom. And you have many tests to pass, if you will. Saint Teresa of Avila went through many tests as a nun, and toward the end of her life, she was caught in a stream. Her horse missed its footing. She was swept down the stream, and her nuns thought she was drowned. And suddenly she found herself on the opposite bank, and Jesus was there, and she found her clothing dry, and he smiled at her. He said, "Teresa, don't feel too badly. This is how I treat all my friends." And she said, "No wonder, Lord, you have so few." But I have to say, I've had my share that way, and it just goes, that's the way it is. So whatever you do, do it for God. God doesn't really care what you do. It's not as if one work were more important than another. Teaching is not more important than washing dishes. Really, God, it's all God's dream. What you do, do it with joy. But the saying, which is a true saying, it's better to fail in your own dharma than to succeed in someone else's. For me to be a dishwasher would be failing in my dharma. And I was a dishwasher once. When I was a very young man, I was hopeless. They had to delegate somebody to help me. Come in. I want to see your smiling face. Come on in. Yes.
Should we not aspire for worldly success?
Should we aspire for worldly success or not?
No. Aspire to please God. He will give you that success, but it's a big test. You know, the main thing that we need to overcome on the path is ego, the thought that we are separate from God. And it's much easier to be humble if you aren't given all possible temptations to be proud. And I've had worldly success. Fortunately, it doesn't mean anything to me. I've been a leader. Fortunately, it doesn't mean anything to me. But it could. When I appoint leaders and teachers, I always try to make sure that they're not people who want to teach, who want to lead, because it'll hurt them spiritually if they want to. So don't aspire for it. If you do, give it to God. I mean, you can't overcome your desires just by saying, "I don't have them." So go ahead and do what you want to do, but give everything to God. That's why Krishna offers us the way to freedom, nishkam karma, acting without desire for the fruits of action. And what is worldly success? You know, the whole universe, how could it come into existence? Only on one principle. That one had to become two. He had to divide himself into the waves of creation. And so we have Dvaita, duality. And everything has its opposite. And for every success there is failure. And every up there will be a down. So yes, find your failure, find your success if you want to, but in time it will become failure. Failure of some kind. A man may go all out to become successful and ignore his children and wife, and find himself a failure as a father. A man may go all out to become anything that he wants to, and not succeed in other ways. Everything in life is balanced. You can't help it. There's no way out of it. For every up there will be a down. And if not in this life, then in some other. There is no way you can keep going more and more and more up. No way. Okay, do you understand that? Okay. And what do you call success? You reach the top of some little mountain and suddenly you find there are more mountains. Then you go to the top and, oh, there's another one. I remember going to Darjeeling and we could see Kanchenjunga, but we couldn't see Mount Everest. So then we went to Tiger Hill and we saw Mount Everest. But you keep finding the highest mountain, there's always something more. Mars has a mountain that's about twice the height of Mount Everest. Mars is much smaller than the Earth, but even so it has that. So, the solution is always to come to a center in yourself. Any other questions? Yes.
How to love impersonally without getting attached?
How to love God impersonally without getting attached?
I mean,
Men are better at being personal love than women are. There was a woman, somebody said to her, the trouble with women is they take everything too personally. She said, nonsense, I don't.
He wanted to know how we can love people, Swami, impersonally.
I know. When you give love, you're giving. When it's personal, you're taking. So yes, I do love people individually. God is in those people. So it's not as if there was a man who flicked his cigarette and on a wall, it was his wife's back. And he said, oh, I didn't notice, I thought you were the wall. That is not being impersonal in the sense that I mean. I mean to see that God is in all and want to give to everybody but not want anything back from them. And really you must love people that way. I have found that in crowds I feel that everybody wants that same bliss. Even the worst criminal wants that bliss. And so you can't help but love everybody. But sometimes they don't know that that's what they're looking for. Still, you can see it. And yet you don't want to grip them. Love is when you want to hold people to you. That is personal love. But to love somebody because, a mother loves her children, and one of her dearest children dies, and she misses it terribly, but it's reborn next door. She won't even recognize it. So we should love the soul, not the human body. Okay? Any other questions? Yes.
The saying in Bible, suffer little children to come unto me. What does it really mean?
The Bible saying, suffer unto me little children.
Suffer little children to come unto me.
For such is the kingdom of God. What does it mean?
It's a very strange thing because you see this vast universe and you think God must be infinitely complex to create such a vast thing. And yet, somehow, he is childlike. He is childlike because his reality is at the center of everything. When you come to that, then everything becomes very simple. When you have a problem, don't look at it from outside. You'll see all its various complexities. Try to go to its center. When I was in college, I studied Greek, but I didn't study Greek. I went to Greek class and almost never did Greek exams, Greek homework. And when the time came for the exam, and the professor, Dr. Post, his name was preparing us, he said, well, there are some people here who might as well not come to the exam, and everybody would look at me and laugh. I would know words like and the, and Philos and Adelphos, because Philos is Philadelphia. Our college is near Philadelphia, and Philos is love, and brother Adelphos is love, and it's the city of brotherly love. And so I'd know a few words like that. And I decided I would try to really study hard that last week. And I picked up the book the first day and I put it down. What's the use of this stuff? I was really wanting to find truth. This didn't mean anything to me. And so I thought, well, I'll study twice as long tomorrow. The next day, finally, the exam was Sunday morning. And I said, Monday morning. Sunday night, I said, oh my God, the exam's tomorrow. And I haven't studied at all. And I was perfectly certain I'd pass that exam. But I didn't know how. Anyway, in my desperation, I finally discovered the simplicity, the simple answer. I said, I'm a Greek. And as a Greek, suddenly I could recognize the words. It was just a part of the whole vast scenery of all the languages that have been produced on this world, and it was easy for me. And for 2 hours I studied until my brain couldn't hold anymore. And then the next day, before the exam, we'd been studying the Gospel in Greek. And I thought, well, I'll read one chapter. I have time to do that. And I hoped it would be the right chapter. It was. So 2 people passed that exam, but I was one of them. It was a very difficult year for exam that year, but I passed it. But if you get to the heart of you'll find that this is true in any problem that you can attack. There's a certain point, if you can get to the heart of it, you understand it. And this is true if you need that, you could sit here in the shade.
It's for the ladies.
Okay. But, I was in Bali, and I was on Mount Gunung Agung. Even at the equator, they can have, it's 7,000 feet high. And it was cold up there, and I asked the man for a blanket, and he brought me a glass of water. And I thought, I've just got to learn this language. I was there only 2 weeks, but I got a book on Indonesian, and I started studying it thinking I was Indonesian. And in 2 weeks, I had a 600-word vocabulary, and I could talk even philosophy and things with people and carry on pretty well. But now I can only tell you, saya mau pergi ke Denpasar, which means now I want to go to Denpasar, which is the capital of Bali. It's useless. But if you tell yourself you can do it, I found that it works. I had this theory also in college. If you want to be lucky, then expect to be lucky and go and meet luck halfway. And that too is getting at the center of the thing. And I found that it worked amazingly. I decided I wanted to spend the summer in Mexico. I only had a 3-month vacation, and how was I going to go to Mexico with no money? My parents were in Romania, and my father was the petroleum attaché with the U.S. government. I thought, well, the only way I can make money is to rob a bank, and I'm not going to do that. So I thought, I'm going to go to Mexico. Okay, suddenly I realized the college yearbook offered prizes. So I looked in the yearbook, and there was one on the basic principles underlying the government of the United States. I thought, holy smoke, who would ever write an essay on that subject? I thought, that's right, who would? And I looked back several yearbooks. Nobody had won the prize. So I thought, if I'm the only entry, then I stand a good chance. So I wrote an essay on, everybody knows the basic principles, the life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness. So I wrote an essay on life, liberty, the pursuit of property. And I showed that by the pursuit of property, people had lost both life and happiness. And it was a good essay, and I got $100 for that. And I got $15 for a poetry prize, and with this $115, which was more in those days than now, but it was not $1 million. And I had a ticket on the train from New York to Philadelphia, so I took that ticket. And there were a couple of people there with knapsacks, and we got to talking, and then we were singing, and I enjoyed singing, so we sang songs together, and they invited me to their home in Ardmore. And in Ardmore, they were having a wedding, and people were coming from all over the country. It was a big mansion. I was feted like a prince. And the next day, the dowager of the clan said to me, my nephew is going to Mexico tomorrow, and he'd be happy to take you with him in his car. And I said, well, that's fine. So he paid my way as an extra driver. I got everything. I got to stay in Mexico, and everything went well. I went to the hospital. This one difficulty with this man, he was intolerant of illness. So when I was ill, he didn't come near me. But I got streptococcus and tonsillitis and dysentery in a way that I urge you not ever to get. I had to go to the bathroom. I had to lean against the wall and sort of gradually inch my way to the toilet. And finally, after 3 days, I was well enough to go see a doctor. And the doctor said, you've got to go to the hospital immediately. And so they put me in a hospital, and he said, you'll have to be here at least 2 weeks. And I made some discreet inquiries as to how much it would cost. It was much more than I could afford. So I just said, I'm going to get well. In 2 days, I was out of there. So really, I found that with willpower and getting to the heart of the thing, I could do anything I wanted to. And I found that to be true all my life. Whenever I put my mind on something, it comes. So this is going to the heart of it. When you go to the heart of everything, you become childlike. My guru was absolutely childlike. You could show him any scripture and he'd know everything. Even if he hadn't read it, he'd understand it. But he was so childlike because he lived in the moment. And he lived with the person. He was just with that person. His mind wasn't going all over everything else. He didn't try to figure anything out. It was just there. So that's what is meant by being childlike. It doesn't mean childish. It means childlike. When you're childlike, you're simple. And when you're simple, you understand everything. So God could create the whole universe because he is childlike. It's a strange concept, but it's the truth. Any other questions?
One has a threat and one has a perceived threat. One has a threat, one feels that there is a threat, and many a times that threat is a perceived threat.
Right.
That causes anxiety and depression, and it's difficult to deal with it. How does one go about doing that?
How does one deal with anxiety and depression when they perceive a threat or anything negative to themselves?
Say that again.
How does one deal with depression and anxiety?
And insanity?
Anxiety.
Anxiety. In yourself.
Yes. On
You
a perceived threat.
When you perceive a threat.
When they perceive a threat. I don't know in what
Negativity
sense.
comes in, anxiety comes in, depression comes in. You really don't know where it's going. But most of the time, this is a perceived threat. You imagine that the threat is perceived. The threat may be real or not. It is very difficult to...
When you perceive a threat and you become anxious and depressed and negative, how do you get out of it?
You know, if you just give everything to God, sometimes it's not so easy. If somebody's coming at you with a knife, I've just been reading a book that one of our ministers, Asha, in Palo Alto, has written. And I've been extremely pleased to see, because she's quoted many Ananda people, most of the people she consulted were Ananda people, how many of those people were able to accept everything in a yogic way. Somebody tripped and fell off a cliff. He was completely calm. If you are calm in the midst of a serious threat like that, which is a threat to his life, then somehow you become more likely to be safe. And if you're not safe and go to the other world, what does it matter? You go to the other world, you don't die. You just change bodies. So if you can really have that kind of courage, and I was so happy that so many Ananda members showed that attitude. When some really serious threat came to them, they were able to just take it even-mindedly. It's only then that you can make the best of the situation. But if you get all rattled and upset, then you make the worst of the situation. So if there's a threat, for example, a boss wants to fire you. There was a story, and a very interesting story, a man who was old and wise and had enough money but wasn't very rich. And a young man used to look up to him as his mentor. And he said, "I'm always marveling at how you're able to keep so even-minded under all circumstances. What is the secret of it?" And he took him inside his bedroom, and he opened his chest of drawers, and he took out a little seashell. And he said, "This is my secret." And the young man said, "Oh, what do you mean?" He said, "Many years ago I was very rich. And in 1929, with the stock market crash, I suddenly lost everything. And I thought I didn't have anything to live for anymore. And I decided I would go out and just drown myself in the ocean. And so I went into the ocean, and I tried to walk into the sea. And the waves were so big, they kept throwing me back on the ocean, onto the beach. And I get bruised, and I kept trying and trying. One time I fell down on the beach, and this wave threw up this little tiny shell. And I picked up the shell. It was in perfect condition. And I said, how can something so fragile survive this heavy pounding when I've been beaten back again and again? And he said, I understand. It went with the currents, and I've been trying to go against them. So we must learn to go with the currents of life. The currents are not always what we expect, and usually we have definite expectations. We want this to happen, and suddenly life will shift us this way, and then we get threatened by it. But even if somebody comes at you with a knife, there was somebody I know who told me this story of her own life, that somebody was crazy, and he was just about to stab her like this. She just looked at him calmly, and gradually calmed down, and put down the knife, said, I'm sorry. But you can overcome everything if you're calm, and nothing if you're not calm. So be calm in yourself. Did that answer that question?
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions?
How to be in the material world, how to be fearless against authoritative people who try to impose on you authority?
How can you be fearless in the face of authoritative people who try to impose their will on you? Is that what he said?
That's what he said.
So I heard you, huh? I'm not completely deaf. Well, I don't know that I'm a good lesson for that, because I got thrown on my ear for being just determined to go my own way. I don't think you should be a doormat. My guru said, don't be a doormat. Stand up for what you believe in, and if these authoritative people throw you out, let them do it. I would say, above all, stand for your beliefs. I stood for my beliefs, and that's what happened to me. So you may say, I'd rather do anything than get thrown out. But I'm made this way, that if I believe in something, that's what I will stay with. Yata dharmas tata jaya. There have been many times when I was tempted, but I did not give in. There was once in 1969, I was working, this was not an authoritative person, but I was working very hard to earn the money by giving yoga classes, meditation classes, to start Ananda. And I was going to a different city every night, and I was very tired. And somebody came to me, and he said, somebody has given me some money as an inheritance, and I would like to join Ananda and give this money to Ananda, but on the other hand, I'm asking you for advice. Should I do that, or should I go to India? He didn't know about my difficulties. And I said, go to India. I wasn't even tempted. I felt that if he had... First I asked him how much money it was. He said $200,000. That was like $1 million today. And I wasn't even tempted. I just felt that if he had really wanted to join Ananda, he would have said that. He wouldn't have given me that alternative. So I said, go to India. And there have been many times in my life when... What did I tell? Was the story I told you yesterday? I told you a story yesterday, wasn't it? Can't remember. Anyway, another time I was... somebody tempted me to... Oh, yes. In Italy, they had somebody lodged a law case against us. It was a very frivolous and foolish lawsuit, but they put our leaders in prison. And since I'm the leader of the whole thing there, they wanted me. They thought I was a fugitive from justice. The case dragged on for 5 years. Finally, I was on my way back to India from America, so I stopped in India because they were having a hearing. So I went there deliberately to see this judge. And I said, I want you to know that if any fault is anybody's, I don't think we have fault, we've done anything wrong. But if anybody is wrong, then blame me, don't blame anybody else. Put me in prison, forget them. And they just dismissed this case. But that was another time when it would have been easy for me to avoid. I did not. I think that yata dharmas tata jaya. If you follow the path of right action, then you will always come out on top. Maybe not the first time, but in the end you will win. I was in the hospital in Gurgaon, and I had double pneumonia. I was in a very ill condition. I was hardly conscious. And the doctor came into the room and he said to me, "Sir, can you help me?" That's not quite the question you expect a doctor to ask you when you're ill. And I said, "I can try." He said, "I have a son in college in Canada, and I have many responsibilities. How is it possible to meet all my obligations in this world and always follow the path of Dharma?" I said, "I have found in my life that by being rigidly Dharma, I've always succeeded." Well, I was not an advertisement for success at that moment, and I saw he left the room completely unconvinced. But I said the next day, I'm going to write a course of lessons, and I've written a course on how to succeed with spiritual principles, how to succeed in business. It's a good course, and it's well worth learning, because we are now coming to a time of great economic depression. It will begin in America. America is now $15 trillion in debt. They'll never come out of it. The only way they'll be able to come out of it is by printing money. And as they print too much, the money won't be worth the paper it is printed on. That will go to other countries. India too will suffer. And you will find it very difficult. And how to get out of that? If you are dharmic, God will take care of you. If you love God sincerely, He will take care of you. There was, when the atom bombs fell on Hiroshima and Nagasaki in Japan, they were near the epicenter of the bomb. There were two spiritual communities, both Christian, Jesuit and Franciscan. They weren't even touched. Right at the epicenter. Don't worry. If you have to go, fine. It may be your time to go. But if it's not your time, God won't let you go if you love Him. So keep in mind, because you're coming to a time of serious trouble. If you live loving Him and live the way of Dharma, He will always protect you. So please take my words seriously, because in India I have found a very serious problem. Indians very often don't keep their promises. Keep your promises. Be true. If you say, "I'm going to do this," do it. Even if it's inconvenient, do it. You'll find that then the law of karma will be on your side. Okay? Any other questions? Yeah.
How do I find my purpose in this life? How do I find my purpose in this life?
I think the main thing is to ask God. I was wandering in my own life. I just couldn't find, I was looking for truth. I couldn't find truth. I looked for it in every possible way. I think my life is a very good example for other people in just this respect, that I tried every avenue I could find except God. And no avenue gave me anything. And finally, I went out one night. I wanted to be a playwright. And I thought, well, what plays have ever helped anybody to find truth? Even Shakespeare, how much has he actually uplifted people? Not that much. And I thought, without God, there can't be an answer. And I remember going out that night and asking God, if you exist, what must he be? What must you be? And I couldn't think of anything. But then I thought, well, I'm conscious. Therefore, he must be consciousness. And I came up with a very Advaitic understanding of God, that he's not a person, he's consciousness, and that we're a part of that consciousness. And that if that's so, then the more we are in tune with that consciousness, the more everything comes to us that we're looking for. And therefore, my duty in this life is to attune myself to him. And I remember I came back from that walk absolutely staggered. I had 4 roommates, and they were all laughing at me for taking life so seriously. And I just thought, these are just yapping puppies. I left the room. And I didn't know that anybody in history had ever looked for God. I know my mother had tried to talk to me of the miracles of saints, and I used to say to her, come off it, Mother, there's no such thing. But suddenly I found that I did want God, and I thought maybe I'm going crazy. But God helped me out. I didn't know what to do. I thought maybe I'll try to be a hermit in some jungle in Brazil or something. And I remember my parents my father was in America, and actually his main work at that time, he worked for ESO, was with Venezuela. But then he decided, his company decided to send him to Egypt. And one further reason that I think that it was for me that his company made that decision was that he found where oil would be, but his company pulled him away from there. Mobil went in and found oil where my father said it would be. But my father did not find oil in Egypt. Esso sent him there God sent him there just to get him out of the way. And then my mother, she was going to join him. And the day that I put her on the ship, I found Autobiography of a Yogi, the same day. And I read that book, and I took the next bus across the country and came to Yogananda and said, I want to be your disciple. But if they had been in the country, it would have been very difficult. Mind you, I didn't know anything about yoga. I thought it was some sort of yogurt. I didn't know anything about Hinduism. I didn't know anything about India. I thought maybe it was full of tigers. I didn't know Hinduism. And that book so completely changed my life. If they had been there, I was only 22, they would have been able to stop me, I'm afraid. Some people have said, if you're firm, you would have been able to. I don't think I was that firm. It was too sudden, too new. But I knew it had to be what I was to do. And you couldn't travel by plane in those days. They couldn't take a plane over to California and persuade me against it. They wrote me many letters, and they sent many people. But I knew by then that this is what I was to do. When you put your life in God's hands, He will show you what to do. And it may be to be a stockbroker, I don't know, whatever He tells you to do. But really, offer it up, offer your life to Him. Say, I want to live for you, and I want to live to fulfill your duty. And your duty, my duty has been to be a teacher, okay. But that's not a higher duty than being a dishwasher. Whatever God wants you to do is your duty. And so, as a householder, for example, you asked that question earlier. If you live as a householder, raising your children, doing the right thing and doing it for God, God has this whole universe to take care of, and we have to help Him do it. But if we're only thinking I'm doing it for myself, we don't get the point, and we don't do it right. So put God first in your life. Do everything for Him, and you'll see that He will guide you. Okay? Any other questions?
Tell us some experience of 29 Palms.
Pardon?
29 Palms, your experience at 29 Palms with Guru?
Well, that was a long experience. I was a long time with him. Which experience do you mean?
Anyone.
Well, for the first few months, it was a terrible experience. I wasn't with him at all. The monks were 5 miles down the road, and he told me to edit the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam. Omar Khayyam's Rubaiyat are a very spiritual book. It's not a love poem as most people think. It's a very deep scripture. And in fact, it even says there, many people thrown out into Maya with the beginning of a day of Brahma are still wandering at the end of a day of Brahma. This kind of depth of meaning is there. Anyway, he told me to work like lightning, but he said, don't change a word. Now, how can you edit and not change a word? It drove me frantic. I didn't know what to do. And he didn't bother to answer. God was putting me through a test. And I would lie on my bed. I didn't have the strength to move. I was so desperate. I didn't want to go back to the world. And yet I couldn't. I was afraid of divine peace. And I was right in the middle. I didn't know what to do. And all these monks kept coming out and going over to his. I was stuck there. And for 4 months I was stuck that way. Then finally I began to accept it. It was okay. Finally I understood. But this was after I got to see him. After that I got to spend every day with him. Long hours every day. The most time I spent with Master was at 29 Palms. And I said to him, I understand now. You didn't mean don't change a word. You meant don't change an idea. He said, yes, that's right. It took me all that time to understand. But he had editors in the beginning who changed his ideas, and I didn't want to do that. Anyway, living with him, he taught me just about everything I know now. And he spent many hours telling stories of the past and of many stories from just all sorts of things, many teachings. I couldn't begin to tell you everything. But what I wrote of the Patanjali, for example, he told me all that out at 29 Palms. And he told me I have a great work to do. And one night, I remember I was standing with him in the driveway there of his desert compound, and he said, every man except St. Lin has disappointed me, and you mustn't disappoint me. And he said it with great power. And I came to understand he has really made me his successor in the sense that I'm the one who's brought his teachings to the world. But it's always been faithful to what he taught. And if I didn't know, I would ask him and I'd have the answer. So that was a very wonderful time, but I couldn't tell you everything about it. Any other questions? Yes.
She wants to know how can one get to the center of his own self and of everything else.
I knew there was somebody talking up there, but it was...
They want to know how to get to your own center and to the center of everything, as you were saying, to be childlike, how to get to the center.
To get to your center, it's a very interesting thing. When you see a sunset, if you say, "Oh, how wonderful, this great sunset," or you see people dancing up and down on television, "Oh, this great soap, it's the best soap in the world," and they start dancing with joy. This is the wrong thing. This is taking you out of your center. If you can learn to enjoy everything. I remember there was this one yogi I met in Pune many years ago, and he said you shouldn't enjoy anything. And I said, "Not even a beautiful sunset?" And they said, "Nothing." I thought, what a dry approach. He was 132 years old, so he must have had something. But still, that was not Master's approach. Master's approach was to enjoy everything with the joy of God. Now, how do you do that? The joy that you feel is not in the sunset. A turtle could look at the sunset and just wonder if it was something good to eat. It's here that you feel it. And when the energy comes up in Ira, there's a response of pleasure. And when it's going down in Pingala, there's a response of sadness. And it's not as if every time you inhale and exhale, it's not that, of course. But when you feel unhappy, you sigh. When you feel happy, you inhale. And if you bring that under balance, then you can go into the Sushumna and the Kundalini can come up. So you have to bring it back to yourself. Kriya Yoga helps you to become balanced in your own spinal center. When you have that center inside, then it doesn't really matter to you what happens outside. It doesn't matter to you if people even try to kill you. You just don't care. And you find yourself free inside. So most of all when Kundalini begins to rise, but even with this reactive process, the world looks good or bad because of your reactions to it, not because of the world itself. Conditions are neutral. It's your reaction to them that makes them seem bad or sad or good, happy or sad. So become centered inwardly, and when people try to get you outside yourself, I know many times, because I have had many duties in my life, my guru used to tell me, your life is one of intense activity and meditation, but he put meditation second. And I've had many temptations to go outside my peace. I've never let anything get my inner peace. If it's going to touch my inner peace, then I just won't do it. I said, rather let it go. So that's my answer to that question. Any other questions? Have I driven you into the ground? Yes?
It is very important to be attuned to one's guru, but won't you say that since you were with Master for 4 years, physical proximity is also as important because the flow of magnetism is more?
He said it's very important to attune yourself to the guru, but wouldn't you say that since you got to spend time with him and had physical proximity, that was also a very important part? And therefore a physical relationship is important as well?
You know, my guru said this. He said that you have to meet your guru at least once. He said he cannot be your guru now. It has to be through me or some other disciple. It must be like a baton in a relay race. You pass it from one to the other. And with me, I hope you feel a little bit of peace. But if not, then I'm a dud. But you have to find somebody who has that. Because he can be the guru through me, but he cannot be directly. In that, SRF has not spoken what he really said. He said, I am the last of the gurus. He meant I am the last of the line of gurus, the line of avatars who brought this message and this mission to the world. But there will be many teachers in that name, and it's not as if people 1,000 years from now, you know, Jesus Christ was the guru of Christianity, yes, and that's true. But people had to meet someone who uplifted them. And my Guru said that they all had to have someone who helped them. And thus St. Francis had somebody. St. Teresa of Avila had somebody. It has to be that way. There has to be some personal contact. And that was what my Guru told me at 21 Palms, one of the many things he said to me. And he said it without any equivocation. So, okay. Any other questions? Yes.
Swamiji, you said that that the Master said that you should have intense activity and meditation, and now you've said that you are the link for all of us. Does that mean that we need to have intense activity and meditation also?
No, I hope it doesn't. I will say I hope it doesn't. I would like to think that some of you, as you get older, will be able to enter the sannyas ashram and retire from everything. Here I am in sannyas ashram still writing books and giving talks and who knows what. But that's my duty, and I feel my peace through that. And not everybody would feel that peace through it. I feel great inspiration in doing it. It's not as if I do, oh gosh, another book. I feel him flowing through me. And he said that, he said to me one time, God will not come to you until the end of life. But he said God will come to me, and that I would be free. So that's the important thing. I think that those who are following me do not need to do what I do. They need to do what I say in this case. Give more time to meditation. And I myself, I'm meditating while I write, and I'm feeling his presence. So as you follow this path, the reason I wear blue is I started a Naya Swami order where people can enter the sannyas order even while they're married. And the Naya Swamis, if they've given up worldly consciousness and attachment and sex and everything, they can enter this order and be sannyasis even in life. This is the ancient system too, that everybody at a certain stage should reach that point where he enters the sannyas ashram. So this, I think, is, I would like to see you all reach that point, where you just give your lives to God. Spend your days meditating, but you can't sleep. I remember going to Vashishta Guha, and I saw many swamis there. That's not getting you God. If you have to be active, then be active for God. Don't be active asleep. There was a disciple of Sri Yukteswar's who used to say, Nidra Samadhi Sthiti. Sleep too is Samadhi. No, it's not. It's false Samadhi. So seek your freedom in Samadhi. Any other questions?
We are seekers who have come from an organization called Spiritual Research Foundation.
Mm-hmm.
So we have got something to show everybody. We are doing a lot of research in the spiritual dimension, and we've got something.
I would like you to come up and show.
So we have come from an organization which is Spiritual Science Research Foundation, and we are trying to educate humanity about the spiritual dimension. You could have a look.
Thank you.
Now, on the 5th of July, everybody will know that the Higgs boson particle was detected. And the same day, in our ashram, we detected some particles which are divine particles. We have done research on this. I'd like to show you. There are silver and gold particles. These are silver, and these are gold, if you will appreciate the change.
Thank you.
And we have sent it to the...
May I put it here? May I keep it? You want it?
We will see. Yes, you can have it.
Okay.
So we have done research. We have sent it to the Bhabha Institute of Fundamental Research, and they have done research on this, and we have found out that it is not a metal. And it contains carbon oxygen and nitrogen particles. So research is still on. We've sent some
But
particles
let me
to the
say
US.
this. God is not a thing, and so he cannot be matter. Matter itself is energy.
Exactly.
Energy is consciousness.
Exactly.
So any particle will still be a manifestation.
Absolutely.
Okay.
That is what it is. It is a particle of
Okay.
Chaitanya, divine
Okay.
consciousness. So I'd like everybody to see it.
Yes,
That's
good.
why
Pass
we
it
have
around.
actually brought it. And
And if you want to know what God is, here he is.
exactly, that's what everybody says. I mean, they are doing research there, but we have found
Okay.
it here, and it's manifesting in our ashram and
Okay.
houses of seekers also.
Is it also manifesting in your hearts?
Definitely.
Okay.
It must be.
Thank you for coming.
Okay. It has been there for the last 2 months. It's going on.
Okay.
This in
Very
event.
good.
Yes.
You know, one thing I have always had against science is that it's arrogance. It thinks it knows.
Next.
But if there's devotion, you're doing a good thing. Okay. Any other questions? One more question. Only one. Okay.
When I was reading the autobiography, I read about Kriya Yoga, and it said that it's very difficult to get initiated into the process, and I would like to know what it is that one has to do to be initiated.
What is she saying?
She said when she read in the autobiography about Kriya, it said that it's difficult to get initiated into Kriya. It's not easy. So she would like to know, how does one get initiated?
Why should it be difficult? It's easy. They say too, this is a mistake they've made. They've changed the autobiography in very important ways. One of them is that you have to be a minister of SRF to give Kriya. Lahiri Mahashai then did not give Kriya. He wasn't a member of SRF. Sri Yukteswar did not give Kriya. He wasn't a member of SRF. This is bilge. You must understand that Kriya is an ancient science. It could be disturbed. As Master himself said, you could destroy all the techniques of yoga because it's central to the human understanding. Somebody would discover it sooner or later. It's in your own being. It's the way you breathe. The breath coming up and down. The Pingala going into the Sushumna and raising Kundalini. That's Kriya. Kriya, it should be given by somebody who's a Kriya yogi, but it's not difficult to get. It's easy. And Kriya yoga should be given not publicly by lesson. I think that's not the right way. A master did it, so I can't say too much, but people have to have the touch also. So anyway, anybody can get it. And even you. Everybody. One more question. That was a non-question. Yes.
Can you speak about the secrecy, why secrecy is maintained in Kriya, as in the initiation is given separate?
Why is the secrecy maintained around Kriya?
It's not secrecy, it's to keep your sense of sacredness of it. It's to protect you. If it's something you can read in any book, you just go from this to the other. I know the story of Milarepa in Tibet. He wanted to go to a guru, and the guru just told him do little things. He said, that's too simple, so he left there. So if it's something you get too easily, then you leave it. And I used to give Kriya too easily in India, and they didn't follow it through. So the reason for secrecy is to help you to understand it is something very sacred. And that's all. Okay? Well, God bless you all. I've been writing a new set of lessons. It takes a year to finish them, and they're very good. So I do say so myself. And I wrote one lesson every day for a month, but you will find them extremely deep. They're donation basis, so you don't have to worry about it costing money. Of course, we hope you will donate because we want to build our work. But do get these lessons. I highly recommend them, even if I wrote them myself.